user group in Natick, Massachusetts, USA. And we have a big celebration this month, and that is the 30th anniversary of Linux. So we're going to spend a little more time on that, and we have a lot of other good things coming as well. And I volunteer to drop some of mine if we're running short. We shall see. I normally start these presentations with an explanation of Linux, but on its 30th anniversary, we have other people who will explain that to you. So I'm going to go right in, if I'm able, to my, I still have to set up. I told you I was off balance. I have somewhere nearby what I want to be using, and I want to get this online so you can see it. Do you do that? Do I remember?
No, but you have to do it.
Window or screen? Entire screen. With a little luck, that'll do it.
And yes, and there you are. Screened.
Yes.
Now you have to.
But what I'd rather do is go over. I thought that would not come back. Remember, there we go. Hello? I'm saying hello.
Firefox cannot allow permanent access to your screen. So you have to take off remember.
I don't believe this. But we had it going.
Can't get there from here.
I can't get there without here. Okay, here we go. Entire screen. Allow. I need a way to keep that on. Okay. Now I wish to go to hither, and I think you should see it.
No, yes. There we go.
Thank goodness. All right, and I have some setup work to do just for me, and that involves giving you a big fat cursor so everyone can see it. Unity tweak tool, cursors, and I already have a red cursor, which I think I will keep, and I'll make it large. And there we go. Now, I think we can talk. I'm going to skip right past the news, which is pretty interesting. We'll be back to it. But I'm going to go into the FOSS history, because the big history, of course, is the 30th anniversary of Linux. When is it? Well, a little while ago, I told you it was August 17th. I found a few other references to different dates and finally went to the source of the whole problem. And 10 years ago, Linus Torvalds talks about Linux's multiple 20th birthdays. And life with Linux. You'll enjoy this one later. Linux was invented by Linus, notice the similarity, Torvalds, and his take on it after 20 years will be interesting. That will be in here. No, it won't either. It'll be in here when you click on that one. And I wish to go back. Nope. And the bottom line is August 17th turned out to be somebody's conflation of August 25th and September 17th, just adding to the confusion. August 25th is when Linus Torvalds first did a broad announcement saying, come and get it. Or more accurately, come and get a draft and tell me what to change before the release. Everyone's welcome to help. September 17th was the first official release of the first version of Linux. And Linus, by the way, wasn't going to name it Linux. He thought that was very presumptuous with Unix and his name and all that. And so instead, he was planning to name it Tweaks, Tweax. Interesting. Then he changed his mind and he thought he'd name it Freaks, which is even more interesting, Freax. It was free, and it was Unix, the X at the end, and it almost happened, but it didn't.
Thank God.
So, a lot of people are celebrating the 30th anniversary. And here's one of them. That link, which you'll have tonight, is from the Linux Foundation, not the only place in charge of Linux by far, but they act like they are. And they do some good things.
Are those stickers?
No, I think these are going to be articles. But I may be wrong. They may be stickers.
I like trusted by NASA and JPL to run a helicopter on Mars.
Yep. So I think you're going to find some interesting things in here. And there'll be plenty more if you just do a general search on Linux plus 30. I think you'll find a lot. But I started you with one. Where else are we? In addition to that, of course, we're talking about Linux. And if you want to know more about Linux itself in excruciating detail, I can't recommend a better place than Wikipedia. Wikipedia will tell you how to pronounce it, who invented it, what came before, what came after, who the hero of the day is, Linus Torvalds.
It says Torvakis there.
What?
It says Linus Torvakis. What?
It does?
Oh, that's weird.
Yes, it is.
Onward. I need better glasses.
Onward, please. So Ubuntu gets good attention here, as it does on our meetings. And I'm looking for more, which is bound to be. Come on, I thought it was up top. Oh, it's here. Okay. In addition to that, interesting. Here is a timeline showing Linux starting in 1991 and going on forever, we hope. But Linux, in turn, comes from GNU, Richard Stallman's project, starting much earlier, the very early 1980s. And GNU, like Berkeley BSD software, Sun operating system, FreeBSD, Mac OS, they all came from the original research version of Unix. All of them did. Why? Because later it got patented. The research version was available free to any research group, university, etc. But Linus Torvalds, who had it at his university in Finland, went home and couldn't run it. He wanted one he could run. So did Richard Stallman way before him. And here, down here are commercial versions, and a lot of them are still here. But Linux is the big number maker of all of them. It's on more software platforms, operating systems, and the like than any other operating system. It's on more hardware. And it's basically taken over everything except what the stores sell. So when you go to a store, you may not hear much about it. It's there, it's arrived. This is a very good roadmap of what preceded it, and that's important. Everything in Linux was built on the shoulders of giants, people who came before. It is still supported by thousands of programmers, not a small company's worth of them. and it's still free, and it has several other important things attached, which we'll come to a little later. I want to go down further because there's more good things in this set of, in this set of things. I guess I have to go back one and then get to it. There we go. This also will be very interesting. Human-machine interface, hardware, and the underlying software. There's a lot of interesting things in this roadmap, and you'll be able to see it too. And different parts of the puzzle that all come together. This is a wonderful article in Wikipedia. I can't recommend it enough. You'll find more as well. So that one's in the anniversary under the Linux, gets you to that one. I have a joke to tell you, a poem to read, and a 4-minute video. They come in this order. The joke is talking about when Linux was new, and people had a lot of fun to make of it because it was complicated. You had to be a programmer, you had to know a lot of tricks and clues, or talk to a lot of people to find them, or go to a school that was already running it. So back then there was a joke about Linux programmers, or Linux users, and then users, in fact. And then there was a poem back at the point where Linux was already smooth. The big versions of it were excellent. They could take on any other operating system, but not many people believed it. That's what the poem is from back then. The 4-minute video is already 10 years old, but it's going to tell you how good it is, and you'll read it like it's new, I think. First, the joke. And for me, just a minute, I claim I should be there now. Might not be true, but I claim it's true. NatickFOSS, yes. The D to switch. Isn't switching. Okay, tough. I'll read it to you anyway. And here we go. Let's see. An Apple user, a Windows user, and a Linux user each need to change a light bulb in their respective homes. They split up, and the Windows and Apple users meet back up 5 minutes later. An Apple user says, a Windows user says, "Did you get it fixed?" And the Apple user says, "No, it can't be changed, so I need to find a new house." Apple users, and how about you? And the Windows user said, "Yeah, I changed it, but now the toilet won't flush." After some time, they notice that the Linux user hasn't come back yet. They go to his home and find him sitting in the middle of the floor with a set of instructions and a box of parts. The Windows user says, "What are you doing?" The Linux user says, "What does it look like? This light bulb isn't going to build itself." That was Linux then. Okay, the poem is about after Linux got much better, but a lot of people, most everybody, except for the little inner group, didn't believe it. This poem was written by somebody you know, a famous person, 10 years ago. Challenge. He said, "You can fly, you have but to try." "Like hell we can," said Bill. Bill looked at me and he winked his eye. But we started up the hill. The day is mild, the sky is blue, the wind blows light and steady. We reach the top and walk across to the cliff. Says he, "We're ready." Small pines point up from the valley floor as we view the ground below. I look at Bill, Bill looks at me, and together we say, no. It's not that hard, our teacher says, so long as you don't say no. No way, says Bill. He starts down the hill, and I turn to follow him, so. But I turn and look, as at the ledge our teacher cries, let's go. He floats off the grass, along the edge, and slowly drifts below. You can fly, I hear. It's in my ear the rest of the way back home. Bill thinks I'm nuts, and perhaps he's right, but I plan to climb back alone. And what that was about was I woke up from a dream in April of that year, 10 years ago. You can fly. You can fly. You can fly. That's what I got from the dream. And it seemed just right for the anniversary back then. So I ended up writing a poem. It's right because it's free. It's open source. It's the opposite of what's sold in the stores. You can just do it. And nobody believed that. People didn't understand it. So we had been there before. You can read the details later, but that's what this poem is all about. Trying the damn stuff instead of knowing it won't work. And everyone who's done it goes away happy. Some people did it and weren't that happy because they, in turn, weren't computer savvy. They learned how to use one thing and thought it was the only way to use it. And our company ended up helping them. This monthly meeting is a spin-off of what our company had done for decades. And that is help people to get started when they aren't in a good position to help themselves. So here we are. Here Linux is 30 years after it opened up. And the poem makes good sense now. Also, there's still people getting aboard. And we hope some people listening in will be newcomers or will use this to involve newcomers. Finally, on this theme, also from 10 years ago, and see if you don't think it's up to date.
Our story begins 20 years ago. Boris Yeltsin was sworn into office. Jay Leno replaced Johnny Carson on The Tonight Show. And cell phones were really, really big. It was August of 1991, and a 20-year-old computer science student named Linus Torvalds sat down at his computer in Helsinki to post what is now one of the most famous entries in computing history. Hello, everybody out there. I'm doing a free operating system, just a hobby, won't be anything big and professional like GNU. It probably will never support anything other than AT hard disks, as that's all I have. A word of Linux open source project quickly spread around the globe, and developers from all over contributed their code. Linus named his OS kernel Linux, and chose a penguin as its mascot, after a little incident at the zoo. He soon made a electrical technology.
Somebody should turn off their microphone, rather.
Linux kernel, along with the GPL license and other GNU components, revolutionized with a few very simple, very
Gloria,
freedom to use the software for any purpose. The freedom to change the software to suit your needs.
Thank you.
The freedom to share the software with your friends and neighbors, and the freedom to share the changes you make. These radical ideas fueled its spread around the world, and somewhat paradoxically, its rise from a hobbyist experiment to the foundation of a large and thriving commercial ecosystem. Companies built businesses around Linux. In 1999, Red Hat's stock tripled as it became the first Linux company to go public. That same year, IBM spent $1 billion to improve and advertise Linux.
Does he have a name? His name is Linux.
Soon, Linux was knocking out industry heavyweights and fueling the rise of the internet with its free software. In short, Linux revolutionized computing. But whenever something is this disruptive, there's bound to be competitive crossfire. But Linux not only survived, it thrived. Today, the kernel development community numbers in the thousands, with hundreds of companies collaborating on Linux development. Every 3 months, another version of Linux is released. So, where is Linux today? Running in 75% of stock exchanges worldwide and powering the servers that deliver Amazon, Facebook, Twitter, eBay, and Google. You use Linux literally every time you surf the internet. It's in your phone, in your TV, running 95% of supercomputers, and in many of the devices you use every day. Linux is everywhere. And the Helsinki-based programmer who started it all? He orchestrates this worldwide army of developers from his home office in Portland, Oregon, as a fellow at the Linux Foundation. As we celebrate 20 years of Linux, we can all see ourselves in its smell. Thank you for being a part of its first 20 years.
Nice. What? Linux is all over the place. Linux is 30 years old. Happy birthday, Linux. Somebody has a speaker on, a microphone on, I'm sorry, and should turn it off.
This
And
is such a strange thing. Your software, Linux, is in millions of computers.
Whoops.
Like
Like
you?
that. And that one was me. Okay. I propose, we've more than done the introductory slide talk. I propose we now go back to last month when we talked about Windows 365, something relatively new from Microsoft. And what's that got to do with Linux? Well, quite a bit in several ways. First of all, Microsoft has noticed Linux is everywhere, except in those stores, and they're getting aboard. They're finding ways to attach Linux to Windows. I'd much rather attach Windows to Linux myself for many reasons. And in addition to that, most of the time, I'd rather not attach Windows at all. So I don't have much interest in Windows 365 or other Windows, except where it abuts our interest areas. But last month, I pointed out there was going to be a subscription version of Windows, and that became a debatable issue. It wasn't quite clear for a while, but now we have more information on it. Bob Primack has taken a look at what that's all about. And Bob, are you ready to explain it now?
Yes, I am.
Please take over.
And let me get back to sharing a screen. And
I have to also.
let me,
Wait a minute.
Chrome tab.
Dick has to
This one.
there.
I have to go find you guys who are in here somewhere.
Am I sharing it?
No, I'm blocking it at the moment. Just a minute while I figure out. Well, wait a minute. Ask Woody. Yes, you are, Bob. You're clear.
Okay. Well, here it is, the story. Is your next PC a cloud PC? And so we have a post that occurred on the Ask Woody site, which is now run by Susan Bradley, Microsoft MVP. And she's talking about Windows 365 is a hosted desktop that you can log into from anywhere or on anything. A sort of a remote desktop protocol, remote desktop gatewaying into your desktop at home or the office, or maybe somebody else's server. It remains to be seen if this is going to be offered to consumers. Spoiler alert, there will be something called 365, Windows 365 for consumers, but it really isn't anything like this. So it will be interesting to see how this patches up on a monthly basis, etc. There were things about small businesses and other stuff. Now, what I'm going to do is go to my document and go to something that I hope is going to be an article about what some other people in the tech press have said about this. Let's see if I've got it.
Could you turn down your volume a little? It's kind of.
My volume?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm talking to Dick.
Okay. Let me make sure I'm sharing the correct thing again.
What's up?
Chrome tab. Let's try this one. This is what Microsoft says about Windows 365. There's a business version and an enterprise version. It's also being marketed to academic institutions. And you can personalize the apps, the content, and the settings. And you can connect up the cloud desktop to any device. It can be bring your own device with a client, or you can log directly into the Windows 365 desktop. And they no longer have trials available, but they did get them starting August 2nd, and it went fast. People are really interested in seeing this. So it's hybrid Windows for a hybrid world. And it combines the power and security of the cloud with the versatility and simplicity of the PC, et cetera, et cetera. If anybody's ever done Office 365, it's kind of like that. And it does have a subscription. And these are big, expensive subscriptions, which are more suitable to businesses. Okay, what I do want to do is say a few more things. I did talk a little bit about Microsoft Azure as having previously offered virtual desktops. This was seen in several Boston area colleges and universities for coursework, where students had their own cloud desktop and their own apps to log into. Now, without directly referencing articles, what I want to do next is I'm going to stop my shares. Okay, am I on me now?
No, wait a minute. Dick needs to turn off his share.
Has anybody seen the articles that I was sharing?
Go to.
Yes, I saw them.
Okay, good. I'll just talk a little and we'll figure out how to get me on the screen. The academic version of the Microsoft Azure platform has been used, but here's why it might not be suitable for consumers. And that is that if you are a business or an enterprise and you have a standard set of apps that are set up a standard way with standard settings, it's very easy to deploy and distribute to a large number of people a virtual desktop. But if you're a consumer, or if you're a bunch of consumers, you are going to have very different needs of scale, different needs of applications that you use, and you're going to have different customizations and different settings. And what a lot of people commenting on various articles introducing Windows 365 were saying is that if you have to have that kind of variety, a heterogeneous ecosystem, it could not be delivered at a reasonable cost point to consumers, to large numbers of consumers. You'd be doing better to use something like what they're now calling Windows 365 for consumers, which integrates OneDrive and Office 365, which is partly in the cloud, and it integrates some aspects of Microsoft Teams. This is another thing that people are really complaining about. Microsoft Teams in Windows 365 is not a complete version. And Teams, as it comes natively in Windows 11, is not complete. So while you can share certain things, you can't actually hold group meetings with that version of Teams. You have to pay for another subscription to do that. So the question that Dick was addressing was, is this the future of Windows? Is Windows going to be all subscription all the time for everyone? And the answer, at least for a long time, seems to be no. This is not the way they will deliver Windows 11. This is not the way everybody will be doing Windows. It's probably the way most people will do Office. Probably that's already begun to be a trend. But there still is desktop Office, if you're willing to pay for it. And there still will be desktop Windows. In fact, I'm going to, in the next couple of days, pick up a brand new PC because mine's having some hardware issues. And that PC is anticipating Windows 11 with its hardware. Tremendous new hardware demands. Whereas if we were going to the cloud, you'd have very few local hardware demands. You could keep your old stuff probably. So that's the main rundown. And if we want to have a little question and answer about it, I'll see what I know.
Any questions? I'm happy to be brought up to date one more month as this scene continues to change. And as I said, I'm happy to look at it from outside. I also point out that if you commit all your stuff to the cloud, do remember my nickname for the cloud. It's the fog. But we'll get into that under security issues later. Thank you very much, Dennis. Bob.
Back to you, Dick.
I have a Dennis glaring out at me from a different corner here, and I'm looking for me.
Oh, Bob needs to stop sharing. I think.
Where's my stop share?
Bob isn't sharing.
No,
Dick is sharing Bob's window.
Yeah, he's sharing my window. He made me the focus.
Share video? Is that what I want?
What do you want?
You want to stop my focus?
Right. I would say so.
There you go.
Okay, maybe. We shall see. There's more in the news. Usually what's in the news fits in one of the other categories, and sometimes...
Make this into a tab, or find the tab up here.
Oh, sorry.
Which I think is this one up here.
I'll do it here, Joe.
No, it's right here. It's already there.
Okay. All right. In this case, there's a very interesting website I recommend you look once in a while called Damn Interesting. This article is about it abandoning Facebook. They just aren't interested in interesting things on Facebook anymore. And how come? The fog. That's how come. I haven't heard that since I was much younger.
HE double hockey sticks.
Yes. It's a good article about what's wrong and how you start in one place. You first fix yourself and then you go to help others. And that's what Damn Interesting is doing in terms of Facebook. You'll be able to read the details, but it's some of what we've been talking about. And it spreads wider than that. President Biden, says this article, has to crack down on internet platforms, not mentioning any Facebooks in particular, along with Twitter, many other ones. But these are ones that monetize you and your data, resell it to advertisers and others, and decide what gets filtered in and what gets filtered out in ways that are threatening the very democracy of the United States of America. So the same issue has now taken on a whole new magnitude. And by the way, it's not just America. So this has become a national issue. And indeed, Biden already has spoken out a few days later on that one. You can play catch up on that with that link. On a different question of how many kinds of damage can you do by infiltrating these platforms and through them individuals, The answer is in the global information war, the expert government departments and companies that track these things, they're now seeing a lot of imitation ships, whole squadrons of ships in some cases, which are showing up just as if they're real. They don't show up on the water, but they show up on all the maps and information that the strategists use. And this could become a very expensive game to play, as you might guess. And to give you a feeling of whether it could really happen or not, here's a new one from about a week ago, I think. New malware disrupts Iranian train system. If all our trains stopped all at once, or our airplanes, or what have you, you'd have a hint of what this one was like. And this one is looking at the actual malware that did it for the techies, but you'll find links to the actual problem that the commuters ran into as well, train travelers. So these are all the same topic, and they're all in the news. That's all I want to say for now. You can read them later, and we can go on to other things, but they're very, very serious. They will affect us because they're affecting too many places already. And how much they affect us depends on how much we get in control of some of these internet sites getting in control of themselves. In addition, moving to Linux is not a perfect insurance policy, but a pretty good one, because most of the damage is not aimed at Linux. It's aimed at Windows. No surprise there. One of the benefits of having Windows out there for us. Okay, let's see.
Having what, Windows overwhelming us?
If Windows overwhelms us in terms of the malware, that won't be a bad thing. It will be a bad thing, but we'll be insulated from it. Hot software. Algot, are you ready to continue your introduction to Inkscape?
I am indeed.
Ah, excellent.
You need to unshare.
I will relinquish control. It says here. Let me see.
Go down to the bottom.
No.
What?
Am I in a different window than I think I'm in?
Probably.
No, same difference. Well, let's see.
Control D.
I've been trying Control D.
Oh, you full screened it?
You mean D is what you mean. D has not been working. Folks, D in Jitsi is supposed to switch between the camera and the screen to be displayed. And it was working for me, and I'll talk more about it on another day. Meanwhile, one of those should be doing it.
Oh, you need to go over to Firefox, and you're in Thunderbird.
I knew that.
And you need to go to NatickFOSS Jitsi Playing up here.
Is D working? He asks. Apparently not.
NatickFOSS Jitsi Playing.
Okay, we still have. Okay, I can do that easily enough. We do want.
Oh, and cancel here.
And find Algot in this question of everybody who's down here.
There he is.
There's one now. And Algot, you have the control.
Okay. Last month, we had a session introducing the use of Inkscape, and the plan is to re-enter that area of interest, which I find very fascinating, and I hope some of you will as well. Inkscape, I need to start, I had to leave this session and come back in earlier and forgot to restart Inkscape. And now I'll share my screen. Window, new document, share, and we're here.
Yes.
This should be a new blank screen as you have started using your Inkscape for the day. And last time we talked about shapes, objects, shapes. And I just wasn't positive I'd made a clear statement about them. So I want to just double check with you about the handles that identify a shape, an object that is rectangular in this particular case. The top left handle controls the top left corner. The bottom right handle controls the bottom right corner. Nothing should surprise you there. But this top right corner is circular instead of being a little square. And if you pull down on that one, it reveals a second circle, but also changes the rectangular object into something more oval, giving you a softer look like an old TV screen, perhaps. And I wanted to review that because this is an object, and we see these kinds of handles when it's an object. Our main focus today is going to be on paths, and it is possible to convert something from an object to a path. So I'm going to do that right now. I go up to the top of the screen to the path menu item, click that, and choose the first choice, which also has hotkeys. I'm not going to dwell on the hotkeys, but you'll find that you will probably prefer the hotkeys over time to using the menus, because I'll be doing that sometime today. All right, that's now a path instead of being an object.
Was there supposed to be a drop down under path, a menu, or just the?
It did drop down a menu on my screen.
Oh, we don't see it.
Well, I apologize for that. I'll make sure that the illustration of that happens in the notes that I post. In any case, the object has now become a path. It no longer has the corners showing. And now I will go to this second tool icon at the left of the screen, Edit Paths by Nodes. And what used to be just corner handles now has a greater number of little squares, but each one of them is selectable individually, allowing me to make that interesting rectangle into a very much more interesting shape. This line between the top right corner that I've stretched out and the one down the slope is now what is known as a Bezier, B-E-Z-I-E-R, Bezier curve. And the secondary little handles that you see here, the circles, are controls on the controls of the individual nodes of this new path. This is no longer just an object. It is now an object that has path capabilities. These secondary controls allow me to adjust that Bezier curve to do pretty much anything I want it to do. Primary controls, along with secondary controls, let me play an interesting game to create shapes that would be otherwise not a square, not a circle, not a star, not a basic shape. So we go from basic shapes to paths, and that's where Inkscape, I think, becomes the most interesting of tools, because these paths are mutable. You can change them as you wish, creating shapes that, when combined with other shapes, are going to give you a lot of interesting possibilities. Okay. I can also grab between two nodes, and I can drag the path adjustment that has secondary controls, but is controllable directly by dragging the curve between those two nodes. All right. That is the essence of paths. Now, unfortunately, I'm looking at the menus now again, and you can't see them apparently, but they do not offer take this path and make it into an object, because there's just some flukiness about paths that can't be reproduced as a square or a rectangle or a circle. However, if I click the top left tool of the toolbar, it says select and transform objects. This is an object in every other sense of the word. It just isn't a routine object with the controls that you would expect on the corners of a rectangle or the points of a star. This is a path object, and paths are the essence of the whole Inkscape experience as far as I've been able to tell. Now, are there questions at this point?
Yes, I have two questions. One question is, when you have a path with the various points on it, and it looked like you could add points.
You can.
So can you delete points?
Yes. All right. I'm going to illustrate that by going back to that second tool where it says edit paths by nodes. Here I have this nearly straight line between the top 2 points, top 2 nodes. If I double click while the arrow is showing a modification of the pointer, you can sort of see that it's got a double arrow hanging down to the right. If I double click at that point, I get a new node. If I have interest in replacing that, I can drag it, of course, but up at the top left, the third tool across the top says delete selected nodes, and it's gone. So I can add and I can delete, which is a powerhouse capability.
Algot,
Yep.
can you add or delete multiple nodes at once, several at once?
I don't think that's a practical possibility. I don't know how you would decide where they should go. It is this arrow with its additional little crossbar that says this is the spot where I want a new node. And I don't know how you would get multitudes of nodes at the same time.
What I mean is, if you already have a bunch of nodes,
Yep.
would you be able to highlight more than one and delete them at that?
For deleting purposes, yes. If I
okay, I understand.
If I click that first one at the left and then control click,
Yeah.
I now have 2 that have been selected.
Okay.
If I grab either one of them, excuse me, I didn't excuse me, not control. It should be shift
Shift.
to double select. I am trying to talk and think at the same time.
Okay.
Having selected those two, I now move those two as a group. If I do the third coming down the left-hand side, grabbing any of the three, I can move all three.
Okay.
So I have lots of control. I can also, of course, do Control A, which would select all of them and move.
Yeah, that'll move the entire object.
Not that that's any spectacular ability. However,
Yeah.
it is one of the things that you sometimes might do for other random purposes. There's a whole bunch of layers to this process. Oh,
I had a second question also when you get.
go for it. Go for it.
Is it possible to not have it colored in other words, have just the outlines of
Yep.
the
Bottom left corner, it has a fill and stroke option. If I right click with my mouse on the color, one of the options I'm seeing, you may not see it if the menus aren't showing up, is remove fill. And that just takes the color away. Now, unfortunately, I would also, in this particular case, lose the outline because it doesn't have one at the moment. I would do well to add an outline. So what I do for that, I hold the shift key down and I click on a color of my own choice and add a stroke which is outside the shape. It's not a part of the shape. It's on the margin outside. And while I'm at it, I can modify that outside margin to make it larger. I'm going to make that more visible by making it black and yellow again. The 4 pixel width, or in this case, this is set to millimeters, but that's an adjustment you can make as well. The size comes up automatically to be a millimeter of distance option, but you can change it to pixels if that's to your need. Up on the top, you have a choice of pixels, millimeters, inches, points, centimeters. It's got a lot of options for the units that are involved. And there will be times when you want a very large margin, 32, at which point you're overlapping, not just expanding the margin.
So it sort of centers? No, it's not centered.
It's not particularly centered so much as it is widened, overlapping the edge of the object. I'm undoing with Control Z standard things for the most part within the scope of Inkscape. There are lots of things that you will recognize as normal operations. It fits into most people's schemes of thought beyond the question of being a drawing facility. Now, that's going to lead me to my last segment of this focus on the path concept. Going down the left-hand side of the screen, we have a series of objects that I mentioned last time. You've got the rectangle, a circle, a thing that's a polygon, something that's a 3D box, which I almost never use, a spiral, fun stuff that you can put to use in certain ways. I'd rather not spend a lot of time on each of those because they are subjects in and of themselves. The next thing I'd like to focus on is this second group of little tool icons. The first is the one that I use most often. It is to create a shape manually rather than create it from a square object or something like that. The idea is to left click with the mouse, drag over to a new position, left click again, drag to a new position, left click again, drag to a new position, left click again, and eventually return to the spot where you started. The thickness of the line is automated at a 0.265 unit. Not that that's in any particular of any particular significance. You can change it, but I have not fiddled around to figure out if I can permanently change the default. I'm sure you probably can, but I live with that under normal circumstances. That is now a shape. It never has object characteristic. It only has these nodes. It has the same ability to be stretched, colored, given an outline that's a fun color. I think I mentioned that there are hundreds of colors if you scroll across this bottom bar, and those with good sense of color will be able to choose much better than I do, but I want this object business and shape business to become clearer. Now, I want you just to note that this second object, the one I made after the first, gets draggable using the top left corner tool. It's draggable into position over the first. And every new item that I make, no matter whether it's an object or a shape that I draw, is going to automatically be on top. There is a layering that goes into effect automatically. However, watch carefully as I go to the upper set of menu control, excuse me, not menu, but tool controls. This little circle is already raised to the top. If I go to the third one, it will lower that selection, that circle, behind the second one. And if I went to the last of that grouping, it would lower the selection to the bottom. Not that it's going to become visible when I do that, but that's helpful to know that it is possible to reorder the stack. I still have that circle selected, as evidenced by how small the object outline box is. So I can bring it to the top, slide it over, make it more obvious that I'm sending it to the bottom behind both of the others. If I drag, I can hide it. If I drag it, it's still under both. That stacking is a very, very, very useful thing, because I can make things that overlie one another. And just as a quick illustration, I'm going to go to the File menu and open a recent picture that I did for today's Word of the Day illustration, which is how I do a lot of graphics. And let me expand this image slightly by going to my keyboard and hitting the plus key.
We're not seeing that screen.
Ooh, all right. So it doesn't do the whole Inkscape. It only does the current Inkscape screen. So let me do it slightly different way. I'm going to import there we come. I don't know if you're seeing any of that
Nope, it's totally stealth.
menu stuff. This is a drawing that I can expand to be visible better of a package of sugar to go with the word, which was carbohydrate today. This is a combined image. The text is added, the domino is added, the color is a feature of many of the parts, but not all of them. There are some lines added using the Bezier tool that aren't closed. But let me ungroup this by holding the Control, the Shift, and tapping the letter G. And if you are able, you should be seeing that this is a cluster of overlapping outlines. The dotted lines show. Are you seeing that?
Yes.
Oh, good. This helps you to see how a combination picture can be created. Over here on the right again, let me put that back at the top. This whole thing can be grouped together into a single object, as this sugar package was for the production of an image. What I then would do to it is export it for use on the web where my postings of the word of the day go. This combination image is built out of overlays of individual objects. And that's the essence of the node-based versus object-based concept. Bezier curves are the key for using paths and node shapes. Just before I leave that concept, I'd like to point to two other tools in that cluster on the left set of tools, just to mention them so that you can say, I know what to do, try that. The second one is a manual drawing tool that I can't use for beans. On the other hand, maybe if you are very artistic, you could make something that was worth looking at that way. What I have found is that I am able to overcome my art problems by using the tools that allow me to modify shapes after they're basically present. Even with this one, there are nodes. You can see them, I hope, in this. And were I to want to work from this as a starting point, I might be able to drag these bits around and decide that this should become a very badly drawn Mickey Mouse hat or some such. Maybe it's a ghost with large arms. I'm not sure. But this is my escape from poor art ability. I would be confident in saying that this sugar package is a reasonable clip art. Not art, but clip art. And I'm happy with the results most of the time at this stage of the game. When I started, I was very, very much more like this kind of random image. But I love where I am these days with this tool.
What you probably need for doing a reasonable art job is something like a tablet with a stylus.
That wouldn't help me because my art skills are what's missing, not the tools in play, but the ability to do a curve that's a clean curve. If I used that freehand tool again and tried to draw a half circle, I
Yeah,
get
but
the top of a head.
nobody can do that with a mouse.
Well, even with a stylus, I would be hard pressed to do that any better. I might point out up at the top left here of the freehand tool, there is a feature known as smoothing. And if I dial it way down, you'll see my problem.
Ah,
There's no smoothing. If I dial it way up, back where it was at 20 plus, I get a much nicer result when it it overcomes the lack of my smoothness and says, "Oh, I'll make that into a nice curve."
So, Algot, have you used GIMP?
I have only for the purpose of manipulating photos. I have found that I am comfortable with it for brightening and cropping and doing things like that. But it is designed for bitmap image work. And I find that I'm not doing that as much as I might. Typically, if I'm going to put text over an image, I will do it with Inkscape because I'm much more comfortable with it. And there is a much more powerful drawing tool for freehand drawing. It's called Krita. It's a European pronunciation of what some people would say Krita, Krita. That is the drawing program of choice for a whole bunch of artists. This is the drawing choice for clip art kinds of people like me. And it has a different purpose as well. It is designed for mutable drawings that work at a bunch of different sizes. While this object is several millimeters in size, it is in fact 168.478 millimeters wide. All I have to do is grab a corner and I can make it smaller without losing any of its fidelity. It doesn't pixelate when I make it smaller. It doesn't pixelate when I make it bigger. It stays a clean image. And that's the purpose of, what's the term? First term is
vector graphics.
No, it's SVG is something vector graphics.
Scalable.
Scalable. Thank you, Bob. Scalable means it totally 100% avoids the problem of pixelation. No matter how big I want to make this, poster size, wall map size, if I scale it properly, it's going to be clean curves, no ramps of bumps. And when I export it for use, I can export it only as a PNG image. That's the basic graphic format that Inkscape allows for going to pixels, to going to bitmap format. But I could take this and make it into a PNG if that were more suitable for its ultimate use. And a lot of people do full-on posters using Inkscape with text and overlaid images and a variety of great artwork. And then bingo, out it comes as a poster that can be then printed very easily. PDFs are a great print medium. You send them to any print shop and they can make whatever you need from them.
Excuse me, you said PNG at one point and PDF just now. Did you?
There are two standard.
Yeah, I know what you are.
SVG is the standard storage.
Okay.
This is a descriptive language. This shape is a description. Scalable vector graphics can be read with a word processor, a text processor program. And some future time I might talk about that. It's not appropriate for today, but this is editable at all stages. It's never permanent until you decide it's permanent. If I'm going to my file menu, which apparently, again, you guys can't see, I have export PNG image as one of the standard items. I have save as, save, that sort of thing. And one of the saves options is to go to, I'm going to try to read this. I have Inkscape version of SVG, which includes some metadata. I have plain SVG, scalable vector graphics, compressed, optimized, compressed, plotter in a DXF for AutoCAD. I can do XML graphics for Flash, which I would never do. I could do it to a GIMP file, which would retain the layers, so I could work on it there, doing work at that point. I could export it as LaTeX. It has output formats, but those who are just putting it out for the purpose of seeing it online will probably put out their version as a PNG graphic, which is perfect for the web, and or a PDF, which would, again, be very good for sharing. Okay, other questions here?
Thank you. I'm impressed.
I have, I think, covered enough ground on the Bezier curves that those who want to start experimenting should download Inkscape from inkscape.org. And I would recommend that you do the app image version so that you get the most recent distribution of Ubuntu is not up to date. It uses a much more ancient version, 0.93, which is extremely stable, but still has some deficiencies compared to the modern one.
Thank you very much. I learned a lot.
Oh, good.
And I already knew some of Inkscape.
Right.
Oh, let's see, I guess back to me. Whoop. Thank you so much, Algot.
You're not sharing it, though. You can say DM.
Yeah, I thought I was. Here we go again.
No, you're sharing. You're fine.
Yes, why do I not see it?
I don't know.
On Fedora, Inkscape 1.1 is the version that's in the archive.
I'm glad to hear that Fedora is up to date.
Good.
Right now,
That's Fedora 34.
Right now, what we're sharing was the infinite regression.
Yes. And now are you seeing the
agenda?
Agenda? Good. Yes, my thanks to Algot. I think Inkscape got 10 times more powerful with this second round. I wonder if the acceleration will continue next month Here's hoping. And I'm going to follow that with a demo that's like it in some ways. I'm going to combine two programs, or rather use them sequentially in order to make an image. Unlike Algot, back I go. Like Algot, I lack artistic talent. Unlike Algot, I have several wonderful artists on tap when I need them.
We've seen your photography. You have artistic talent.
Well, it's like what Algot was doing with his program. I artistically use the program, but I'm not drawing. And I appreciate the program can help me to that extent. And like Algot, I have good taste once the program gives me choices and tools. But I happen to have a few good artists. One of them is our granddaughter. But another one, not exactly dead, but not exactly alive. And let's start right there. Let's go meet that artist. Its name is Chaos, spelled with an X, and we'll take a look at it. This is the home base for Chaos, and they say it's easier to experience than explain. And they start right off by doing that. Here's a live image online. And in it, this is a mathematical expression. It's not an object. It's not an image. But we're using the computer to take that expression and plot it. And then we get an image which we can freeze, turn into an object, take elsewhere, and that's what I'm going to do. This particular fractal image is a very famous one of the most famous ones discovered by an early pioneer of the mathematics of fractals. His name was Mandelbrot. This is the most famous Mandelbrot fractal. If you took its right side and put it on the bottom, you could call it a snowman. And you can go into any part of it and enlarge. And the mathematical formula just reproduces itself from that point or from that point. And wherever you go, you'll find it starts doing different kinds of very interesting patterns. That's a fractal taken into graphics mode on a computer, and my artist is a mathematical formula. Okay, that's what it's about. Now, Ubuntu and most any other fairly complete version of Linux will probably have Chaos available for you. As Algot pointed out, you may not get the latest version, or you may. You may also get a version that's better adjusted to your version of Linux. So there's a trade-off between those two, and you're welcome to choose either or both. But what I normally do is I go to the home base and see what the current release is. Then I go, because I'm using Ubuntu, to the Ubuntu Software Center and see what its current release is. Here's where I'd find the current one from home base. But over here, I can go into my various tools, and one of them is going to be the Ubuntu Software Center. And I can go in there, and I can say Chaos. And yes, it knows about it. In fact, it knows I've already installed it. But if I click on it, it'll tell me what it's got. And if I look down, there are ways it'll tell me what version, and I can compare the version and the release date. It's pretty recent in this case. In this case, Ubuntu's right up to date, I dare say, but not in all cases, as Algot pointed out. So I make my choice and I go in, or I look at the description and see what else I want to know about it, etc., etc.
You read the reviews and somebody said this stuff doesn't work.
Yeah, I think it works fine, but
Okay,
somebody
this
else
one
thinks
does.
it doesn't. So whatever. You can afford to try a few, and you can afford to find out where they are in order to try them. But this one's that simple to do. I'll just launch it. And since I already had it installed, and I'm doing the same thing I did over there, really. Nothing different here. And wherever I go, way out on the tip of this one maybe, I might get to something interesting. Anytime I want, I can steer to something a little different. And they in turn grow into interesting things. So if I wanted to take that, I could take it and I could save it as an image, and I could bring it across into Photox. What would happen if I did that? All right, whoops. Right-clicking didn't work. Up top, I've got some options. I'll say, do I have a file save as? Why, yes, I do. But only in PNG format. That's fine. I'll take that one. Why don't I? And there it is. I'll say, give it a different name so I can tell it apart from the default one. And I'll say, yeah, let's put it right in there. Where am I? I happen to be on my computer. I partition the drive, so I have a big user data partition. That way I can keep all my user data in there, and I can put multiple Linux partitions down under. Any one of them can reach for this, for my data, and play with it. It's a useful trick I use. And so I'm over in user data dict, and under it pictures and the ones for this year, and that's where I'd like to put it. So I'll say save. Basically, I'm done. I can now go over to my Photox, load that. Here it comes loading, and it's loaded something like 50,000 pictures just then. Interesting. It loaded the thumbnails of them. And I can go in there, or I could go to the side. Now I've got its tools up, and I could say metadata, search the metadata. And I could search it for something where, let's see, right now, Archimedes is selected. I don't want that anymore. Gonzo. And what I do want to do is search files, because it was in the file name, for fractal. See what happens if from there I say proceed. I've done this before, folks, as you can see. But here's the one we were just playing with. See it? And it's the one we had, but I'm in Photox now. I could, for instance, go to Effects and say, this is a favorite for these for me, alien colors. What happens if we, across the whole thing, morph some colors? Answer is, with that set of settings, not much.
Yeah, well, there
were changes, and I'll backtrack a bit for the moment. I'll say, whoops, I didn't mean that. I have to go back in and select them again, which won't take long because they're set for it. Metadata, search, and Oh, um, yeah, discard. And find the set again. And in this set, for example, here's one. That's how it was created with chaos. But then I pressed that same button in Photox on it, and I got that. See the difference? So that one tool is fairly flexible. Or effects. Let's try cartoon. I don't know if it'll go well on this or not, but sometimes it does. I've got a lot of parameters I can play with, but for the moment, I'm just going to try them.
Didn't notice the
Didn't
difference.
move much. We'll take the line width up to 5, say, and the blur radius, cool hover depth, I'll go to 3. We'll see if that did anything. Yep, some changing, but I don't much like it. And I fiddled with it until I had something I liked. I can fiddle with it one by one. 510 and hit enter. Oop, didn't do it. Change it to the 10 and then try. I'm not hitting good ones for the demo, and we don't have that much time left today and a lot more to do. So I think I'm going to leave it about at that, but I've demonstrated the two tools you can use. I'll point out that Photox, like some other programs, can import other routines, including whole programs. So I could conceivably build a version of Photox very easily that included chaos. What the two sets of controls would do with each other, I'm not quite sure. That's not what I tried to do. I just instead made an image with chaos that I then chose to play with in Photox. And I think that's a good trick. I'll look at one more set while I'm in here. Let's see, I'm in Gallery. And here's one varying. Here's another one. And I'll play some games with it afterward, etc., etc. There's a lot of things you can do with these. And that earlier one, I added detail. This one, look at the shading in the blue areas, for example. I pretty much took it out. You can go in a lot of directions using a lot of tools, and using them in sequence is powerful. This is almost what Algot did, but with totally different programs. Again, I'm having the artwork done externally, or in a way that's so simplified I can do it nicely. That's it for that demo. Where am I? Here I am. Let me see. Were there any questions on it? You can find each of the programs here, or as I said, in your favorite Linux in its software center, or in one of the many other software centers for free software. Synaptic Package Manager is another one I lean on, and there's probably 20 of them I can think of quickly. Speaking of that, there's more than one fractal tool. Chaos isn't the only one. Here's an article you can look at later, talking about 9 rather nice ones, including chaos. Here's an article, which is, I think, a good new article on Jitsi. And guys, I think I'm going to go look at it tomorrow. And here's a good new article on 20 basic Linux commands for beginners with examples. I think that if you want to move from a Linux user to get into the heart of the beast, you should know that A, any Linux worth its salt has a simple button you can push, and you're in the heart of Linux, where you can do command line programming. In some cases, it's much faster or much more powerful. And here's some beginning commands to play with that. On my version of Ubuntu, let's see, I think Control T, what I want. I'm not in the right mode. Ignore me. We'll forget about it for now. It's an article you can read.
It's actually Control Alt T to get in terminal.
Yeah, but I didn't. Well, maybe I can from here. Let's see. What do you know? I can put up a little one or make it a big one. And now I can do things in it. Like, there's a very simple Linux command. Read the rest later. There we go.
Exit.
So in any case, you have the heart of Linux at your wish anytime, but I don't recommend beginners try it at all. When you're ready, go in and unleash the beast and find out what you can do with it. And here's a good entry point for that one article. Back to the software. Linux for Starters, your guide to Linux. This is for the other half. This is when you're just starting Linux. You're not going to the heart of the beast. You just want to know how to use it like any other operating system with a lovely graphic user interface. This is currently a series of 12 chapters, and they're getting added weekly or monthly, I forget which. And it's just absolutely lovely. If you know a beginner who wants to get started, I can't recommend anything nicer than this series. Take a quick look at the series. And what is Linux? Why use it? Choose a distribution, or three. But I suggest you center in on one fairly soon and get good at it. Make a bootable Ubuntu USB stick. If you're still in Windows, you can make the stick and use it to boot anyone's computer, including yours, into Ubuntu in this case. And then from that stick, how do you actually install it? Things to do after installing it, navigating your way around the desktop. This is everything you wanted as a beginner, done very nicely. And this particular one tends to lean on Ubuntu, which we specialize in here, but I think you'll find it of general use, and I think it will suggest some other good tutorials like it. It's lovely. So back we go. I was surprised to find that text-to-speech conversion software is quite old. I think this eSpeak dates back to something like 20 years. And that surprised me as a free open source way to take what we're looking at here and have it read to you in your choice of voices. Wow.
And we used to have one in TRS-80. It wasn't very good, but
I think you're right. They've certainly been around. It's not a new invention, but I was surprised to find a beautiful one in here and to find out that it dates back quite a way. And once again, it won't be the only one. Question?
Yeah, this is Jerry. We used to have it at the Boston Linux guy that wrote Emacs Speak. He was blind and needed to use Emacs, and he had to have it talk to him and stuff like that.
yeah, I remember him.
Yeah, thanks. In any case, this might be very useful for some purposes, and especially if you have bad eyesight, of course, and give it a try. You might be rather surprised. I was. And you can just click to find it. I believe Ubuntu had one ready to go. I don't remember if it was up to date or not. but it's easy enough to try now that I showed you how. Finally, we started near the beginning of this program talking about Windows and new stuff in Windows. Windows 11 has installed an improvement. Now, Windows 11 isn't out, but for developers it is. And Windows 10 has introduced Windows Subsystem for Linux, and it's kind of a bear to set it up. As I said before, I don't particularly recommend setting it up unless you need it, but if you want it, it's not that easy. And the news is Windows 11 says it's hiding down inside, for the time being, a single command to set that up. So if you're setting it up, that'd be nice to know. And here's the article that tells you how to do it, and that it also works in the newer versions of Windows 10. Yes, there's a bunch of versions of it. So you can read the article to see how to do it, but maybe, it says here, and the maybe is the fellow who develops Photox, who I work pretty closely with on that project, says it didn't work well for him. Didn't work at all well for him. And he says he'll wait till they get it straightened out, or just let Windows users worry about it. So that's my best news for now. Maybe counts, and take it with a grain of salt, but it's apparently coming, and it'll be coming at a lot easier pill to swallow. Personally, I worry about that. I think it's a pill I don't want to swallow. Don't want others to swallow. But go ahead, take a look at the article anyway. What else do we have here? Well, first of all, Algot, you did one, so I'm going to skip this one unless we end up with time. Sorry. And I'm going to skip to one under FOSS Fun by Dennis Payne. Dennis, are you ready?
Yep.
Good. I will do some prestidigitation and be right back. He said, which one counts? Is that the one that counts? No. That's the one that counts. And
there's Dennis, I think.
Can you see my screen now?
With the blue trees.
Like,
yep.
I can indeed. And
I typically run Fedora, so this is the background for the latest version of Fedora.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to demo Shattered Pixel Dungeon. This is a game that is... Was there a question? All right, this is a game that is based off of an open source game for the cell phones for Android called Pixel Dungeon. The developer of Pixel Dungeon stopped doing anything more with it, and this other developer started picking it up and made Shattered Pixel Dungeon. He's updated it so that it can run on the desktop, which I don't believe Pixel Dungeon can do that. So let me do one thing first so that I can hear better. Can I make that? It does. Settings. We'll just mute the sound effects for now. All right, so the developer of this has pretty simple instructions for building it. So I downloaded the source code and built it. There are probably binaries out there, and you may be able to install it under Ubuntu. I don't know. I didn't look. The developer does go over and say that it has a few features that some people might not like. For example, the news button here will go to his website and get the latest information. And this support the game allows you to go to a Patreon that he has to help fund the development of the game. He includes instructions on how to turn those off if you do not like them, but I don't care that much. I think it's unlikely that he is using the information nefariously, so I've left it alone. This game is what's called a roguelike game, which means that it's similar to the original Rogue. There's varying definitions as to what a roguelike is, but some of the things that are pretty commonly required to be a roguelike is that it needs to have randomly generated levels. It probably has permadeath, which means you play it and you can oftentimes save the game, but once you die, it deletes your save file. So you can never go back to that old character. They are often usually turn-based as well. So in this, you get to choose what character you want to be. By default, you have only the warrior. There are events that unlock other characters. So I have access to the mage. And then you can just enter the dungeon. Tells you a little bit about the story, but these type of games, typically you're not too worried about the story. In this case, you typically have to go down as far as you can and get some sort of treasure. You can move around with the cursor keys, and if you have the number pad, you can use the number pad to move diagonally. So I found this little dewdrop that you can pick up and put into your water skin. You have your inventory here. You also have this. Some of your inventory is kept in this screen. Some of it is on this other screen. I don't know what the reasoning behind that is, but there's a magnifying glass if you want to ask what something is. You can take a look at your character and find out what abilities he has. So as you level up, you get different abilities over time. And so right now I'm at level 1. Let's see if we can find a monster to fight. Now we see that there's a monster. This one happens to still be asleep at the moment. So I have these little stone rocks that I can throw at him. Then you can pick up the rocks again. And in the treasure chest, I found some mail armor. And then you can decide to equip it or not. The question mark here is telling you that you don't know whether it's a good item or not. So you could put it on and find out that it's cursed, for example. We'll just equip it anyways. The that also told you that the armor is actually too heavy for you when I was looking at it. So if you look at it, probably this armor is too heavy for you because it requires a 14 strength. So you could still wear it, but it won't be as effective. It may actually get you killed, perhaps. So this is the basics of the game. Now, you can fight things with your sword by just moving into them. So in this case, I'll just move into them and attack. And so that's basically it. You're on mute, Dick. Dick, you're on mute.
I didn't know I'd been muted, but I had. Right, here I am. Okay, Dick Miller again. We are running short on time, so I plan to just do a few things and leave a bunch of good things for next month. I'll have less work to do. And building on what Dennis just showed you, I've got a real quickie here that's worth mentioning because I like to play games to get loose from what I'm doing and come in with a kind of a clear new track on it sometimes. So I like fairly short games, fairly simple, that I can just do for a while and then stop. I've liked Jeweled, and it's one of many, many games that are all basically the same idea. They're called Match 3 games. They have rows and columns of several different kinds of icons, and you manipulate one at a time, one space at a time. You can go sideways or up and down, and anytime you get 3 in a row, they disappear. If you have to get 6 in a row, they'll disappear, same price. If you can manage to get 2 rows because you move one into the corner between them, they'll both disappear. And sometimes what ends up as a result, as the empty spaces get filled, sometimes that will also line up and disappear. So you might get a whole bunch of hits in one round at times. These are all called Match 3 games, and the original ones were, or at least the most popular early ones, were Diamond Mine and Bejeweled, Bejeweled. And then some open source ones came along, and I've liked GWELED Jeweled, which is available from Ubuntu Software and has been running fine for many years. but it went bad on me. I thought it was probably Ubuntu that did it, but it turned out it's the same release as they had at Homebase. I loaded the one from Homebase and it failed the same way. I might have debugged it, but instead I went online to see what was like it. How do you do that? Well, you can do it in the various software centers in general. But my favorite place to go is online. And oh, good grief, I just forgot the name of it.
Not similar to.
Something like same as.net. Come on, what's the word for same as?
Similar?
Alternative to, isn't it?
Alternative to, thank you. Instant mind block. So I went to alternative2.net and looked for ideas, and I set it so it only accepted items that would run on Linux and that were open source. And when I did, it came up with a few, but I really like this one. The comments from people using it really like this one. So I went from Jeweled, which, hello, come on up. It's slow, but it's coming. There it is. It looks about like this. And I went from that to K-Diamond. And K-Diamond isn't nearly as pretty, in my opinion. Very bland. Might have some other look settings available, but that's the one I'm using. And it's a solution. It does all the same things, and it has a few different settings that are vary a little from the ones in Jeweled, but basically they're the same game. It's the same solution, and it worked for me. And it was also in the Ubuntu Software Center, as it turned out. So I think this is not a live version. It's just, well, let me see what I got here. If it were a live version, I could, for instance, drag this item down one, and it would make a line of 4 that would disappear. It's not a live version. It just so happens, would you believe, that I have a live version. That's it. I don't know why it doesn't look more like it. And so here's an example of that. I'll drag this one in, and a lot of them disappeared. That's one move. And that's how it goes. Now you look for others where you find one color, and you can make a line of 3 or more. And it's about that much fun. This one, I could make a line of 3 by moving this sideways. But maybe later I can do something better with that. In the meantime, I could do this, and so on and so forth. That's about it. Interesting game, and they're all the same game in slightly different flavor. I just wanted you to know that if you lost yours, go get that one. The other thing I wanted to do before the end, just a minute, got a lot of good things hiding in here, some of which I may throw in anyway tonight, because there one's just to read. But I thought there was another one here. I'm looking. Here we go. I'll save Ubuntu on your phone for another day, but this one is very timely. I want to show it to you now and talk more about it next month. What I've got here is a way to look up smartwatches. Now, you all know where you can buy a $400 smartwatch. And some of you know where you can find a $130 smartwatch. I'm wearing a very nice, satisfying $13 smartwatch, and that included shipping handling from eBay. So I've set this eBay link that you will have to look at smartwatches, but only smartwatches shipped from the USA, and only smartwatches shipped from the USA that cost less than $25. And we'll see what it has.
Are we going to unbox?
For that, I want to click on mine instead of that one. Just a minute. I'll be darned, I didn't put in the right link. Okay, we'll do it quick. Smartwatches, that sounds good. There's a bunch of them. Now we'll adjust it. So we are only looking at new ones, or because they might be an even better deal and new, open box ones. They've been opened, but they haven't been used. And then we'll set for ones that are under $25. And not all listings. You'll find ones that are junk parts, and you'll find ones that are auction items that you can't have them now and you don't know what the price will be. So I'll say I want ones buy it now. And finally, I don't want the ones from China in this case. Well, the prices are better if you're in no hurry. If you're buying it for Christmas, that might be a good move. I'm going to say US only. This is the link I thought I was giving you. And while we're there, next thing I do is up here. Here we go. Best match is not what I want. What I want is to put them in price order, starting with the price and shipping of the lowest one. Most affordable. Look what I found, 99 cents to $66. What's going on here? Same as what's going on here. It's going to be a catch. It looks like it's a smartwatch, but it's probably the watch strap or something like that. Let's look at this one, for example. And you get something for $2.99. It looks like just what I want, unless I look carefully. Green strap only, $2.99. Whoopee ding. If I want a black one and I want a watch, it's $12. Well, that's still okay, but I think that's a deceptive way to do things, and I'm warning you about it. Read the fine print, guys. But eventually, you'll get to some that are real watches for a remarkably low price. Is this one of them? In fact,
watch band.
Well, let's find out. No. Blood rate, blood pressure. I think this is the real thing, a watch. Let's read it. First of all, it's 30-day returns. Buyer pays for return shipping. If you use PayPal and eBay, that will not be true if it was falsely advertised. They will pay. So that's good to know too. And here we have lots of that particular kind of watch. Here's the particular one. And it says it's a smart bracelet M4. It's a watch. If it's not a watch, you're going to get your money back. It's going to be a watch. And that's half the story. The other half of the story is, what brand is it? Nobody knows. Unbranded. Most of them come from a small number of factories in China. And those factories will label them anything you want to label them, maybe starting at a quantity 500 or a quantity 1,000. And some of the brand names you know and like are the same watch. But the series is what the factory sees it as. It's an M4. So you could do a search on M4s within here and find all the prices on basically that same watch. You might find somewhere they didn't bother to call it M4. You wouldn't find them with that search, but they also may be the very same watch. You can look at the features. But this is a very quick cut to find a lot of watches inexpensively. I like my current one, which has a buzz name of A26. But the big news is I just got a brand new one. It's just arrived here.
And you need a scissor.
If I can possibly get back to my screen, this is where I'm going to end to be continued next month, because this is getting interesting. And hang on while I try to First, my
That one playing
so I want to be
NatickFOSS.
here, and I want me. I should be not far away at this point, and when I get there, I should be able to go into the damned camera mode.
We
You
have
think
to unshare.
that's how, isn't it?
Thought it was.
Used to be. Try down here. That one, right? I
No.
think so.
Not the chat.
Oh, well, I'll go here where everything else hides. Is there an unshare in there somewhere? Probably that.
No, that's for a link. Close it.
Go to the share screen just to the right of the camera.
That one.
Oh, I guess it's not what I clicked. Okay. Fair enough. I have clicked it. Anything going on?
Nope. Yep. Nope.
Not what I wanted. Come on, guys. Up here, maybe?
Nope.
This is frustrating because of all the nests. Ah! You got any other way to get to it here?
Go to the other screen that you just went to for. Wait a minute.
I'm waiting.
Allow it to use your camera.
Sounds good, right?
Yeah. Tell it allow.
Thought they'd never ask. And folks, this was ordered last Saturday from California by eBay. And first of all, this is the watch I like. I'm quite happy with it.
Which you can't see.
And I believe it's called an 826. I'll confirm tonight when I set up the final version online. And it's a good one. But this just arrived an hour before the meeting from California. Cost $12.20 or something like that, including mass tax. So it was about $11, I think, something like. And here's the box. This one looks a little different on the inside, but about the same on the outside. And are you folks seeing this? Joe, click on the big. I think you're seeing it okay.
Yeah, we're seeing.
Fine.
Now Joe's computer is showing it too. Good. And I think this is what you want to know about, but I'm not sure yet. It has a lot of features, and a few of them are showing on the side of it. Instead of having just heartbeat for my heart health, it has blood pressure and it has oxygen saturation level, all done automatically while you're wearing it. It, of course, has how far you walked, how many steps you took, all the regular things you'd expect, a way to link to your smartphone so you can handle calls by just tapping your wrist, et cetera, et cetera.
No, the blood saturation, oxygen saturation is to know instantly if you have COVID.
So, folks, thanks very much for being here. Happy 30th anniversary, Linux. And tune in next month to see if this is the hit that you want to and want to give to friends. Bye now.
Okay, bye.
Bye, everybody.